The Imitation Nation podcast covers all things counterfeit, hosted by Shabir Imber-Safdar of the Partnership for Safe Medicines and Sven Bergman of Venture Global. All statements are their own and not the opinions of their employers. Welcome, Imitation Nation 14. Sven, how the heck are you?
I am absolutely fantastic. I had an amazing week, a lot of deals and contracts closed and worked out, and love working with folks like you. I just had an amazing week. Was just up in Michigan for something with one of my daughters. So I'm blessed beyond belief. How about you?
I'm good. I made it back from Mexico City, and I got to see some nearly 2,000-year-old pyramids that were stunning at Teotihuacan, which I probably just mispronounced. And the entire trip was spent arguing over who really built those pyramids, because it was not the Aztecs. They came much, much later. Certainly not the Spaniards. They were like 1,000 years too late. And it's not the indigenous people of Oaxaca. And apparently it's not the Mayans, although my wife's theory is that it was the Mayans and no one's giving the Mayans credit. So I don't know who built them, but let me tell you, I got to climb some of them. I managed not to fall down them as I was going up or down, which is a bigger, difficult task than you'd imagine. But yeah, it was great.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're back safe stateside. That's good. You look nice and relaxed. You even have a slight tan, which is lovely. So why don't we get a little bit into our show?
Absolutely, because you know what it is? It's my favorite time of year. It's Operation Pangea time.
Oh, it's counterfeit Christmas.
It is. For everybody who works in fake medicine, Operation Pangea, and this operation is number 17, is like Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, all rolled into one. It's all happening right now. And this year, Operation Pangea 17 is the biggest Operation Pangea that we have ever seen. Yep. It is enormous. And they have this cool space age looking graphic. And as you know, I love Interpol's PR department. They make these graphics that summarize their operations really, really well. I'll put it in the show notes.
All right. No, they do a great job. And you're right. You know, for me, yeah, you're right. It's 17. I've roughly been in the space that or a bit longer. And this operation by any means breaks any record that they have had. Just the sheer numbers, 50 million doses of illicit pharmaceuticals seized, and that's worth $65 million. So for comparison, right, other Pangeas topped out at like 11, 12 million, and we thought that was a lot. 65 million. They arrested 769 suspects, dismantled 123 criminal groups, over 1,700 investigations with 847 search warrants. That's a lot of search warrants. That's
no.
A lot of
Sven, that is a lot of overtime. That's what that is.
But how fantastic, right? And what they found, like 90% of the pharmaceuticals seized like any regulatory approval from health authorities, and the stuff they find, the usual steroids, anti-diabetic medicines. So a lot of the like new weight loss drugs or anti-diabetic medicines in there. Health supplements, herbal products, obviously always your erectile dysfunction. And it was just incredible. And this trend was driven by the widespread promotion and availability of these medicines across social media. So Interpol said, hey, listen, this is really starting to spread, as we, by the way, in the beginning of the year called that this will get worse and worse with social media and AI. They're like, this is becoming so widespread now. We gotta go bigger. And boy, did they go big. So bravo, Interpol, and the 94 countries that participate in that.
Well, and I think the issue is social media and therapeutic medicines. Like I've been talking for years, and we've been talking for years about the dangers of controlled substances, controlled counterfeit substances being sold on social media. PSM, where I work, has been doing this we did this tracking for years of deaths from fake pills sold on social media. And that work has resulted in the introduction that's about to, I think, happen, of the Cooper-Davis-Devin Noring Act, which would require some disclosure by the platforms when people get caught doing that. The social media is big, and I know that Genentech's been taking a leadership role in this area in trying to address dangerous counterfeit therapeutics being sold through social media, and I'm excited. I'm doing everything I can to help them in that effort. But the thing about Interpol and Operation Pangea this year that I think is amazing and is not going to be appreciated by people is that this Operation Pangea was 6 months long, right?
Yeah.
This ran from last December until this past May. And everyone, you might look at that and be like, oh, so they just did a lot of work over 6 months and then rolled it into Operation Pangea and called Operation Pangea. And you can look at it that way, or you could look at it at Interpol has managed to get how many countries to prioritize counterfeit medicine enforcement for 6 months, for half the year. How is that not a huge win?
It is a win by any measure. They took down 13,000 websites. And to your point, I think, and I think you and I appreciate this because we very much work in the space. I know the folks that listen to this, that are in the brand protection space will appreciate it as well. But Operation Pangea always was, it was a showcase like, hey, this is bad, right? But the only thing they did, not the only thing, but what they mostly did is did a bunch of seizures, did smaller operation seizures at airports, international mail facilities, and might have arrested some folks here and there. What this was is they're like, okay, just catching the frontline sellers or just a website or just a shipment, that's not it. We gotta do investigations upstream. And for me, that's the difference here. It's 13,000 websites, which is massively disruptive, and taking out 123 groups. And a group I got to work up, right? I find the first seizure and I got to work the case up, and that'll take time. So I'm glad they took the time to not just knock a website out that sells Viagra or whatever, but really work the cases and dismantle the groups. So yes, and bringing that focus to 94 countries, fantastic. We'll see. Maybe Interpol makes this a year-long standing operation, which would be incredible. And, we always said when it was Pangea, we're like, 11 million. Wonder what would happen if they would do it, longer. That's what happens when they do it longer. So great work.
It's like Interpol is running an annual rehearsal, an annual dress rehearsal, and more countries join, and more countries, practice what it's like to take down international counterfeit medicine groups, and countries practice working together with their law enforcement operations, and they get better and better at it. This is the same as the FBI's Operation J Code, where in the beginning they were like, we gotta do crypto currency? Like, what is that? Like, what is the dark web? And now they've been doing it over and over again. They're getting really good at it. They're getting so good that I've seen agents who worked on dark web and cryptocurrency stuff leave for private practice and are now being hired by people who are in contested divorces where one spouse is siphoning off funds to hide them from the other one during the divorce through cryptocurrency. And they're using it to recover funds. Yeah. So there's all sorts of social benefits to basically doing rehearsals. And Interpol has secretly been having the world's law enforcement agencies practice every year, and now these dress rehearsals are huge, right? It's like we're now working our way up to like a 1,000 person cast rehearsal for Les Mis.
And you're right. That's exactly it. Building the capability, building the bandwidth, training more and more officers on how to pursue these crimes. What are the laws? What exactly can you and how do you charge it? And so, no, I completely love this. I hope next year's longer, 9 months, and 100 million. So,
absolutely.
Anyways,
okay. So, Sven, talk to us about the Costco versus Lululemon cage match.
So as we reported before, Costco, because they're focused on selling things that are less expensive or high value, low cost, have been selling a lot of things that are kind of a dupe, semi knockoff, kind of looks like the real thing, but it's not, and have always been kind of starting to skirt the line. As we discussed, they used to be somebody that was selling overstock. The brand stopped that. Then they said, fine, we'll just sell something that looks very similar, and selling it under their Kirkland brand. And it appears like they got a little bit too close to one of the brand for their liking. So Lululemon sued them over their pants and their hoodies as part of that lawsuit. And in there, it's really interesting. It's an interesting suit because they don't focus on a trademark because there's no trademark on it. So they couldn't do a trademark infringement. They don't focus on utility or design patents, right? So something where design something in a certain way where that design is very, very unique. Think of the, Nike swoosh or something that's really, or an iPhone, how it looks, very unique. But they really went, or utility where something works a certain way. They went with trade dress. And trade dress is really, this is how it overall looks. And the look goes with functionality. And so that's all under trade dress protected. I've watched several explainers on this and kind of deep dives on this. And for me, this is my opinion, and I love Lululemon. I think it's a fantastic brand. I think they might be stretching the IP law a little bit here because
stretching, that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I know. Intended. And so they, for example, have front pockets where they say, well, our front pockets are angled at a certain way, and then they're held in place by a rivet. And we have the back panel, and the back panel has a certain triangle, and above it are the belt loops. And you look at this, and they're like, and then, the other brand knocks it off. The problem is when you look at Levi's does the exact same thing. You look at any Levi's, they have angled pants with rivets, right? They have the same back panel. So there might be some of it that's just customary in there. Now I understand that brand was clearly going to look like a Lulu. There's some things in the lawsuit that are fine. Like, for example, they say we're four-way stretch. They pretend to be four-way stretch. That's clearly an imitation. So there's some things in the lawsuit that might go for it. But there are many claims that when you look at it, you're like, that's really not a trade dress. But what's most interesting about it is that Lulu asked for a jury trial, not a judge trial. Because when you have a judge trial on these things, judges get super technical. Like they get exactly what I'm just talking about. Very technical. Does it violate the law? A jury can be swayed by emotional appeal. And this is our brand. Look at all these images. And this is copying it. So I think Lulu went for a jury trial. We'll see how it is if the jury can be, kind of swayed by fancy arguments if it goes. If I'm a betting man, I think this lawsuit will go down in flames. I think that went a little too far. And to your point, like part of it, the lawsuit is they're calling out four-way stretch. So this lawsuit is clearly a stretch.
The most punny story we're gonna ever do. So, and I'll just take another drink here. It's Friday. We're recording this on a Friday afternoon.
That's right.
So they didn't say that this is copy because of a trademark. There's no Lululemon logo on it or even in the sale or marketing of it. They didn't say that it's because of a patent, like you've invented a new kind of zipper and you copied our new kind of patented zipper that no one else has invented in the world. It's a trade dress, which means that the way that we made it, that it looks, is unique to our product, and you copied it. And my favorite thing about this is that Joe Ng, who is a very famous 150,000 followers on YouTube fashion blogger who knows clothes, and we got to give credit to my wife, Sarah, because she follows him. The man will take apart a piece of clothing and show you why this has better craftsmanship than the other one. My wife is very smart. She now can, well, she has been able to for her whole life, and been able to look at stitching and products in the store and tell you what's best. Joe Ng was like, look, they claim that this descending seam with a rivet on the end is novel to their pant. And then he pulls out a pair of Levi's from 30 years ago and says, it's not novel. These pants have it too. If you get a chance, and we'll put it in the show notes, go watch Joe Ng do his take apart of this litigation. I think it's spectacular. And I think the most important thing that comes out of this lawsuit is probably a repeated lesson, and we have been learning this lesson for 30 years now, of what's called the Streisand effect. Right. Barbara Streisand has a home in Malibu, and somebody put a photo of it on the internet 30 plus years ago, and she got really mad and filed a lawsuit to take it off the internet. And all that did, apart from costing her legal money that she didn't win, was make other people go and say, what does Barbara Streisand's Malibu home look like? It drew attention to her place, which is not what she wanted. She wanted freaking privacy. And so I've seen over and over again, TikTokers and Instagrammers say, you know what? I think I should go check out these pants at Costco that look like Lululemon, but it cost a fourth of the price. That is not what Lululemon wanted.
No, I fully agree with you. The funniest headline I read was actually by a law journal, but Lululemon sues Costco accidentally starts wave of free Costco publicity. That's exactly it. Their sales skyrocketed after this went viral. And yeah, so this suit might be backfiring on them. We'll see what it does. And for me, that on the serious note is, when suits like this backfire, they can set bad precedent for folks that actually really protect trade dress. So it when you overstretch it once again. Sorry, they do that.
Clearly, we should always record these with a drink in our hands because we're far funnier.
But so it might have a downstream effect where it makes trade dress arguments less agreeable, like reasonable. And so we'll see. Lululemon had a couple of bad revenue quarters. So part of that might also be that, like, hey, we're seeing the revenue impact of dupes. And I don't know if it's the right strategy. We'll see what happens. It certainly will be interesting to watch.
Yeah, and I would just say Trademark Counsel comes in all flavors and values and expertise. I've seen the very same situation of people illegally substituting foreign medicine for FDA-approved medicine. I've seen 2 different law firms try and tackle this under trademark law under the Lanham Act, and I've seen one crash and burn for their client, and I've seen one score an enormous win for their client. And I think in that case, the difference was counsel. And it really matters who you hire to represent you here. And not everybody who says they're a trademark expert can get you the same results. So I don't know who's representing Lululemon, but whoever it is, someone at Costco is gonna make a reputation on this.
Let's see where it goes. Speaking of good counterfeits and counsel and counterfeits starting to spread, I know you saw a story about counterfeits in China, right?
Mm-hmm. So in Mexico City, I had a new experience, which was as I rode around in places in different Ubers, because I wasn't going to really drive in Mexico on my own. That seemed like a little ambitious. I kept seeing these BYD electric cars, Build Your Dreams.
Yeah, they're nice.
That's a Chinese brand. They aren't here in the U.S. yet, as far as I know. If they were, you should be shorting Tesla stock because they are much cheaper than Teslas, and they're apparently amazing EVs. And what was interesting is that that's Chinese intellectual property. That's a Chinese brand. So China, if you look at the different brands and IP that they've developed, phones by Huawei, drones by DJI. One of my favorite brands, I own a lot of Anker portable batteries and chargers.
Was Anker Chinese?
I think so. And then cars by BYD.
I'm surrounded by Anker. I could show you like 4 Anker.
You're surrounded because you're about to go on vacation, and the first thing you do when you go on vacation is you pack all your portable batteries in your luggage. I'm the same way. China has intellectual property to protect now. And at the same time as the OECD has said that they are also the largest source of counterfeit products, they are now in a different role in having to protect their IP and fight off fakes. And I think that this is actually interesting now that they are starting to have customs people who are not just blocking exports of counterfeits that are made in their country. They're now in the weird position of having to block imports. How has that been for you for a lifetime of brand protection work to see that start to flip?
Well, so the interesting thing is for, the almost 2 decades now I've been in this, whenever we work with China, our charge always was when we wanted for the Chinese government, the PSB, which is their equivalent of the FBI, when we wanted for their Chinese customs to get involved, we had to show them why a U.S. counterfeit is bad for them, right? So why did it make sense for them to enforce? And so a lot of that focused on us on what it does to crime and civil unrest in their country and all of those things. So I think for this, I think China will respond very well to this because this is a clear risk to their economy. And China is breathtakingly well resourced. So they have over 100,000 customs officers, right? That's just in the customs department. Then they have another, I think, 75 to 100,000 PSB officers. So they are very well resourced to deal with this. They will just have to change what they look at, inbound versus outbound. And the other reason why China, I think, will be very well equipped to deal with this is their punishments are for like counterfeit and other things are rather draconian. Like this is not a, 12 months house arrest and, or, parole and pay some restitution. No, we're talking labor camps and, so there's significant penalties that come with this. So I expect for them to deal well. And it's the normal progression of economies. They're moving up through the ranks. They're going away from being a just outsourced manufacturing country to one that actually creates IP and values and moves more towards the place where the U.S. is, and the U.S. moves more to a service industry. So it's a natural evolution. My prediction is China will deal very well with that because they have the government structure to do that. But yeah, it's certainly, and to your point, BYD, terrific car, not available in the US. Part of the reason why Tesla stock has been under pressure for the last couple of months. And no, the BYD cars have like fast charging of like 10 minutes and your car's full. So no, they certainly have a lot to protect. I think we should do more of that. And I do predict China to be very well equipped to handle this.
I actually think that the interesting aspect of this debate is going to happen domestically in China. That the big fight is going to be when a Chinese counterfeiter knocks off a Chinese brand and the domestically have to actually navigate and fight this. I think that at that point, we're going to really see the culture in China start to shift. And it's not going to be fast for all my friends who work in apparel who are wishing that China would come along faster. I don't think this is going to be a generational change. I don't think that this is going to be but I will say, you point out China has severe penalties. I can remember one of the earliest counterfeit medicine crimes was covered by a reporter at the New York Times.
Yeah.
Who talked about the Chinese SFDA official who was executed because he did something. He had a role in counterfeit children's cough syrup that was adulterated with diethylene glycol, with what we would call antifreeze.
Case in point, here you get a license suspension, there you get executed. So that's a strong deterrent.
We just had two brothers from Washington State who got 30 months and $50,000 penalty for importing counterfeit cancer meds. I suspect that people might think a little harder about that crime if your life is on the line. So I do want to just do 3 quick hits. I want to point out that Factual America, which is not a website I'm familiar with, but they put together a nice list of 9 documentaries on counterfeits. The one I'm going to watch is actually Real Fake, The Art, Life, and Crimes of Elmer Dahori. It's about an 8-year-old documentary, but it's about one of the world's greatest art forgers. So we'll put that link in the show notes. You can pick one of them to watch. But yeah, I'm very interested in art forgery. It's such a subjective thing. So what are you looking forward to?
No, and to say, by the way, the same thing, that website, we're not associated any of that. It provides a really interesting insight. Like whenever people go like, oh my God, why are they doing this? And ultimately the answer is always money. It's just money. And it really talks about how much money is in that, what the true costs are, like what it actually costs besides just a brand. Like there's some real, like there's human trafficking and slave labor, and there's so many issues with counterfeits. So it's a good resource to kind of get a very good overview of this. So I love this. So what I'm looking for, you know me, I'm a wine snob / aficionado, one of the two. And so there was a really interesting article, and we'll put it in the show notes, of Bill Koch, who had a 43,000 bottle wine collection, which is pretty impressive. And he had been selling bottles off and off. And he's talking about what counterfeit wine has done to the industry and what a big issue counterfeit wine started to be in the wine industry because, and I just did the math, he sold like 8,000 bottles for like $30 million. So every bottle on average of his was like $2 to $3 grand. So they're big sell bottles, right? And so if you buy something, how do you know it's real? And he gives some great examples of what brands have been doing to authenticate wine. It is a nice story about why wines are something important to protect. And I just like it. And I've noticed it myself when I was in China in 2014, 16 for some business deals. And that the ceremonial aspect of a beautiful bottle of wine coming to dinner in China is something different. Like it gets presented and opened and it's like, it's an occasion, right? And so it's very interesting. And so, yeah, protecting, making sure that is not counterfeit, because the last thing you want to do is drink some counterfeit wine. We as Germans had done a glycol. We actually had the same thing. Now the Germans had a bad harvest in the 80s and we spiked our wine with glycol to make it sweeter. That went bad. So that's an interesting story to read for anybody who likes wine and kind of wants to figure out how to make sure they don't buy fake wine. Read that. What else did you find?
So it was not as exciting as Interpol, but the EU authorities actually busted a big counterfeit sales crew, and they apparently were more on the white collar end of this crime. You know, it was controlled by Chinese criminals, but it was actually endemic throughout the all EU and covered 14 EU countries. And it was a big group. Like they employed accountants and attorneys and other white collar professionals to make this work. Wow. It was a combined counterfeit goods and also VAT tax embezzlement scheme, which is not a thing that Americans are familiar with. But you know, to be able to sort of ask for, I guess, a refund of your VAT tax in a fraudulent way, you can end up making money as well as selling a counterfeit good in the process.
Fabulous.
It mostly deals in things like scooters, electric scooters and bikes, and lots of apparel, shoes, clothes, stuff like that. I would say that it's small in compared to Interpol. It was about 6 million euros, which I think is $11 million US, roughly. Right. And I think that it didn't have any medicine, so it didn't necessarily cross my desk as something that I should be interested in. But you know, anything that funds criminal networks, they're going to eventually get into medicine, right? If you're in the counterfeit business, the medicine is too much money to ignore.
No, and to your point, while you're right, it was about 7 million total that they got. But when they estimated up how big the actual market is, and the actual market is like 450 million, actually 700 million total, 450 million alone in the value-added tax, right? So value-added tax in Europe is like 16%. It's pretty high. So no, that certainly was a nice enforcement. The last thing I want to say is here, when you just talked about it, I was at a conference with Europol in 2016 in Brussels, and the Europol director at the time inked the term crime Inc. And he said, don't think of counterfeit rings or counterfeiters just like some dumb criminal that's trying to do a cheap, easy way of making money. He's like, they're sophisticated operations that operate like businesses. They have a CEO, they have CFO, they have accountants, they have marketing departments. They run like a business. And whatever counterfeit or illegal line is under it is just a product line. And we got to think of them like businesses, and we got to dismantle them, which, closing the loop to the beginning of the story, why I love that Interpol dismantled these networks. You got to take the entire thing out because they're sophisticated, well-established operations that it's not some dude selling counterfeit on the corner. Like these are almost corporations. So love that they're doing this. Love that the pressure is on. Let's cheer on law enforcement, right?
So I'm just going to say to everybody, if you have a chance, go to imitationnation.com. Make sure you like and subscribe us. Add us to your podcast feed so we download and you can listen to us on the way to work, since you shouldn't be playing with your phone on the way to work.
That's fine. All right, Shabir, it was a pleasure seeing you and having a drink with you on a Late Friday recording. Please read us out.
The Imitation Nation podcast is a production of Cause Stories and is the sole owner of this production. Podcast production by Shabir Imber-Safdar. Podcast management by Sarah Imber-Safdar. Theme music written by Jonathan Boyle.